All right, welcome everybody to a new podcast I'm going to be doing hopefully weekly. So, I have with me my friend named Mark. Welcome, Mark.
Hello, everybody.
First off, this week, big day. Biden's inauguration is coming up in 3 days,
The day we've been
and
waiting
the
for.
Capitol is essentially on complete lockdown. They have what they call a green zone in the entire Capitol, which you usually see in the Middle East. So anybody walking around Washington, D.C. needs to have identification and a reason for where they are going within this zone. I don't know if you saw it at all, but it looks like a
Mhm.
complete like militarized like
All the way
battle
from
station or
the Lincoln
something.
Memorial, past the Washington Monument, all the way to the White House, the Capitol. It literally looks like all the tourist zones are gone. There's no walking around. I mean, it already was kind of dead because of COVID, but now with all the threats of violence and the insurrection, it is completely wiped out. No people, and just flooded with people that are armed and protecting and riot gear. Doesn't look
Yeah.
good. Does not make the United States look good at all.
Yeah, well, 25,000 soldiers. I think this is the largest US deployment all over the world, within our own country. So a big scary thing right now is of course the Capitol and making sure no crazy things happen like like an assassination happens at the inauguration. Hopefully that does not happen. But another big issue is around the country at state capitals, national guards all over the place are setting up for big riots and protests outside of each state capital. So I was wondering, what is your like percent chance that you think a Capitol building in America is going
Gets
to be
rioted.
successfully like, obtained by rioters, like completely from the inside?
Pretty high. I mean, we have 50 states, we have 50 capitals, we have varying in size and population, and being able to deploy the National Guard. I don't know if this is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure every single state has deployed their National Guard to do a mini version of what's happening at the Capitol right now. And it's pretty scary when you think about just what this means, what the implications of this are going forward. Our country is way more polarized and way more radicalized and way more dangerous than we initially thought. And it's not looking good. I would put the percent chance of at least one capital getting at least what happened to the Capitol last week in
Hmm.
Washington, D.C. Almost 100% chance something like that happens somewhere in the country.
There was a poll I saw actually, and the poll said that Americans think the biggest threat to America 50% of people said this. The biggest threat to America are other Americans. The country
Compared
is
to
so hyperpolarized, and this is compared to terrorist activity. This is compared to war. So Americans think their fellow Americans are 100% the thing to worry about right
I
now.
saw the same thing too. I think it was like the other 50% was made up mostly of economic was second, and that was above natural disasters and other countries slash terrorists. So we are completely we're com- yeah, we're not looking good. We're not looking good at all.
Yeah, hitting a boiling point, which a lot of us predicted with Donald Trump. The rhetoric behind him has been so destructive. And it's really funny too. This entire time since Trump took office, it's all been a big joke, since even since the campaign. Trump talks out of his ass. Trump talks, like a poor white guy, I guess. Trump doesn't care about what he says. But in reality, throughout history, language and rhetoric have probably been one of the most deadly weapons of all time when it comes to what people are led to do, from the words of like Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, and whoever else you want to bring in. These people are not just good politicians, they're good authoritarian, manipulative, like cult leaders. And that's
Mhm.
what we seem to be seeing with Donald Trump supporters right now because did you see Kyle Kalinske said it's weird to him why people are storming the Capitol because it's not because of healthcare. It's not because of economics. It's not
Yes.
because of housing. It's because of their love for Donald Trump.
And we elected the biggest narcissist we could have imagined, and we have someone in office right now that is unable to lose, unable to take loss, and that's exactly what's happening. He can't take a loss, and he's willing to burn the entire country down with him until he gets what he wants, which is power. And he's about to lose it, and a lot of it. He could go bankrupt. A lot of the banks are pulling out from under him. A lot of marketing deals, a lot of his businesses are pulling out from under him. He's gonna end up in a pretty bad spot if he didn't do what he's doing, and he's trying so hard to dig his heels in, and on the way out is permanently ruining decorum, civility, and the nature of our country as a whole.
Well, that's really funny how so many of our norms and everything, that's what really has upheld our country, its entire
Mm-hmm.
being. Like, if you think about laws in general, without people to follow rules and laws and norms and civility,
Sovereignty.
yeah, in general, the entire society can fracture in more ways than one. And what we're seeing right now is, and this is a conversation we were having before about like, was economic insecurity a big um thing at play when it comes to the people storming the Capitol, or was it something else? And my answer on this was economic insecurity and Democrats being bad at politics is the reason like Donald Trump got power, the reason Donald Trump got elected, the reason he got the bully pulpit, the reason he got that megaphone, and also the media helped him get that megaphone. But when it comes to
Absolutely.
what happened with the insurrection, all the people there, or a lot of them, were pretty they weren't there for actual material reasons. And if you look at the support for Trump nationwide, I think 60% of white voters went for Trump versus Hillary. But if you look at poor white voters actually went to Hillary over Trump. So the idea that like economic issues is the reason these people are doing this doesn't seem to be founded in any empirical evidence or any like evidence whatsoever.
And I see that point 100%. The problem with this election and what the framework, especially with the Democrats, is, and how you said they were so bad at politics, they're planning on going back to an age before Trump. We don't want to go back to an age before Trump. We are at a Great Depression level economic downfall right now, and FDR single handedly, or his policies single handedly, saved capitalism and allowed for the lower class to actually be progress in that new era of the country. And without an FDR style change by Biden or whoever administration comes in next, we're going to see another Trump. And I agree with you 100%. Last week's riot, last week's insurrection attempt or coup attempt was not because we didn't get $2,000 checks, was not because we didn't implement UBI or we don't have Medicare for all. It's because the system is so downtrodden, is so does not allow for anyone to have hope at all, that some idiots can just fill the void of power because there's no hope at all in the system. There's no security in the system. We don't have a system based on trust, based on the welfare of others. It's based on pure gut reaction, pure fight for yourself, pure pick yourself up by your bootstraps. And that's what Trump represents. If there's anyone that represents the current state of America more than Trump, that's why he won, because it is a complete narcissist, complete, you know, for himself.
Yeah,
and
ignoring all the problems.
and yeah, it's exactly what's happening. And if we can't move past that, if we can't move into a new era of politics, we're doomed for another Trump that actually can motivate his people even better than him, that can be smart on how to organize and be successful in a coup, be successful in taking over the military, be successful in taking over business.
Yeah.
So we should be careful right now.
And those
We
are
should hold.
two separate and similar things at the same time. So like being poor and economic anxiety doesn't make you pick up a Klan's flag and all that stuff. But this system does open up power vacuums so that these evil ideologies can get a real power stake in our system. And I think that's where people on both sides of the argument kind of missed. Like, Jimmy Dore said, if every person got $2,000 checks, they wouldn't be there at all. When in reality, they were marching like, did you ever see the SpongeBob movie with Plankton and the bucket hats, the bucket
Yeah, yeah,
helmets? They were marching like zombies to the Capitol trying to defend Trump because they thought their nation was going to be stolen from them, much like many white people throughout history have thought the blacks and stuff were going to come steal their countries. And that's
Mhm.
why Trump always dog whistled about the suburbs being overrun by low cost
Exactly.
housing and all that shit. But yeah, we also can't ignore the system that did bring up the power vacuum that Trump was able to seize upon. These crazy authoritarian leaders seize upon those vacuums. And my big issue with, we were talking about Crystal Ball, her take was she was kind of using the system to minimize what Donald Trump was doing within the system. And I compared it to like the recession in Germany and the failures
Yeah,
of that government in 1930. That recession helped someone like Hitler, who was evil and authoritarian, gain power, but we cannot blame Hitler's actions on that system, and we can't blame
exactly.
the Nazis that followed on that system. But you can blame, obviously, him getting that power, him getting the microphone, him being able to manipulate people. Because
The
I know
fact,
so
yeah,
many people from where I am, very conservative place, that did vote for Obama twice. And they lost hope in this system and did vote Trump. But we need to be able to separate that. We need to be able to separate people who are literally white supremacists and also people who are like sort of confused about where to go because the system kind of left them behind. But we
Do-
can't like you know what I'm saying here? Like
yes.
we can't minimize the threat of white supremacy that's
So,
always
for
been here.
example, if Obama was what we all hoped he would be in 2008, hope and change, huge medic. Let's say instead of Affordable Care Act, he was somehow able to get through Medicare for all, or he was able to get through a $15 minimum wage, or he was able to get through some more welfare programs. Do you think that we would have Trump? Do you think that the perspective of the welfare system affecting what happened last week? Do you think with Obama we have Trump? With if Obama was like FDR, would we have
Well,
Trump?
okay, so those ideas would 100% be alive. But the thing is, those ideas would never have gotten power without Obama being so bad. Because I want to really this is called like class reductionism when you say like, if nobody was poor, racism wouldn't exist. It basically says like class is the root of all everything. Like everything comes from class issues.
Yeah.
But what we're looking at here is a long issue of systemic racism, xenophobia. Like for example, one of the most racist places in the country are the suburbs, and that's because of redlining, segregation, white flight when all the white people ran away from the black neighborhoods, and all stuff like that. So there's so many things to consider other than class, but 100%. Populism is the name of the game. And there are people in the middle who are receptive to right wing populism and left wing populism. There are
Hmm.
people like that that go from Obama twice to Trump. They respond to populism. And you can also say Trump's populism, the economic stuff, can lead somebody to this racist neo Nazi stuff and QAnon,
Well,
like a
it's not
pipeline.
it's not that it leads to it, it's explicit. Trump comes out and says, "Oh, the Chinese are taking our jobs. Oh, the Mexicans are taking our jobs." He ran
Yeah.
on Build a Wall. That's we like to say it makes sense. It's an immigration issue, but where's the northern border? I think it's very clear that the Build a Wall has racist underlings,
Yeah,
and so
it's
that's
the fiery
explicit.
rhetoric. Because Obama deported more people than Trump did, but these conservatives don't even know that. Like Obama was so tough at the border, but he refused to be like racist and angry about it. So that rhetoric that you're talking about
Exactly.
had to play a big
Who
role.
built who built those cages, Joe? Who built those cages?
Oh, yeah, Obama built the cages. And then obviously Trump made them into freaking homes, made them stay there forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just how this system works. If power vacuums are left open, populism is going to fill them. And if Democrats don't step up right now, and this isn't to say I want to make sure we hit this point really home. Class doesn't define if you're going to be racist or not. There's many factors. It's xenophobia, It's self-interest throughout history in America. Whites were taught to not like blacks because
Slavery.
blacks were slaves, and you had to think they were subhuman to justify it. Stuff like that, and that continues. The people who were pro-slavery don't go away. Those families, you know what I mean? Like the
Mhm.
pro-slavery families were pro-Jim Crow, then they were
If your if
pro-segregation.
your great uncle was a slave owner and a plantation owner, and that's what your family heritage is from, I'm pretty sure it's going to be hard for you not to grow up in a situation where there's no prejudice towards explicit prejudice towards black
Yeah,
people at all. There has to be, and that's a whole different discussion.
yeah.
Reparations is a whole different discussion, but so that is a huge part of racism as well as what's left over from slavery.
Yeah, and it's up to people on the left and also Democrats if they feel like stepping up. It's up to us to make sure that real political power isn't captured by these evil ideologies, while at the same time using our positions to like. I know AOC is funding like a reform commission or something to help people stop believing in like white supremacist ideas or white supremacist ideas and stuff like that. We need to get power, and if Democrats fail, this is like the timeline. If Democrats don't do something good enough to capture enough votes to win this election, and we have to beat the Electoral College, by the way, and the Senate because of land and all that
Yeah,
shit. The 50 senators who are Republican represent 40 million less people than the 50 senators who are Democratic, which is freaking crazy. They need to find a way to win. It's their
it's 15%
responsibility
of the
to make
country.
sure fascism and like white nationalism doesn't actually gain power in America. But yeah, like saying there are a bunch of like struggling people out there fighting for their resources isn't. I mean, they're holding Nazi flags, Confederate flags, and if you ask somebody why they're there, they're trying to stop the votes from being counted for Donald Trump. I'm sure there was a couple people in there that like started off like this is what I mean by the pipeline though. What if you were a poor guy who voted for Obama twice because of the populism and he let you down? Then Donald Trump's economic populism brings you in. You press on that, and this is a social media thing. You press on a Donald Trump ad, and because of the algorithm, that leads you to like Ben Shapiro and like
Hmm.
Steven Crowder. You press on that shit. That leads you to America One News Network and all that. Clicking on that leads you, due to the algorithm, to actual like neo-Nazi QAnon stuff. I'm sure
Yeah,
there's some people who were in positions like that who did fall for that populism.
who fell on
But
the rabbit hole.
yeah, but this entire problem is so much deeper than that, and I don't have any perfect solutions for that other than like integration, making sure people are more
You know
educated,
what?
exposed to different cultures and all that.
Back to the insurrection in general. It also shows just how null and void any policy or any real political ideology exists within the Trump right and the Trump populism. If there's anything that is more clear than that, it's blue lives matter, blue lives matter, blue lives matter. And then you go to the Capitol, and what do? You threaten police officers' lives, you pin them against the wall, and they are literally gasping for air. You shoot at them, you threaten to kill them.
Yeah,
They're scared for their life. What happened to Blue Lives Matter the whole time?
yeah,
Blue Lives Matter doesn't mean Blue
it
Lives
was always
Matter.
anti.
Blue Lives Matter means Black Lives don't matter. That's what that means a lot of the time, and it's
Yep.
dog whistling. It absolutely is. You know, you say you're a patriot, you say you support the flag, and then you go march with a Nazi flag, which we fought against the Nazis, a Confederate flag. We fought against the Confederacy. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and it bothers me so much. Holding up a Confederate flag or holding up a Nazi flag or saying Blue Lives Matter, it might mean something else. It might mean, you might be
Yeah,
racist if
it's
you have
it's
this.
anti-black. It's not pro-pride. If you fly an American flag, then maybe you can make the case you're being like patriotic or whatever. But yeah, this entire thing, dude.
I have a family who is a police officer, and we used to, some people in my family used to, proudly hold the Blue Lives Matter flag, and they had to stop because people assumed that they were racist. There was some type of political statement. It wasn't turned it in the past since Black Lives Matter movement. The Blue Lives Matter flag has turned from being a simple, thank you and to the heroes that defend our neighborhoods to somebody who is against Black Lives Matter. It really is an example of how the Trump was able to take advantage of people who have no economic hope, or economic or hope in general in politics and just take advantage of them and just fill that void and run with it all the way to the point where a coup attempt happened.
It's like a cult leader too. Like there's a big phenomenon like even the people in the suburbs who are rich, who are very insecure people. They might be scared because of our country's history being like fear-mongered about black people, black people moving into town or an immigrant or something. They might be afraid of that, and Donald Trump knew that. He knew that anger was there, and the anger he drew upon. There is populism economically, like I said, that got him elected, but he did draw upon that anger when it comes to the race war, which is insane to think that actual Nazis have so much power in our society. But Trump's ideology, and you said the thing about cops, it's authoritarianism, it's anti-liberty, it's pro-government power, it's pro-crushing dissent, it's anti-media, it's anti-black, it's anti-any person of color, it's anti-poor white, but the poor whites love it. It's anti-poor white. They're manipulated because Trump says racist stuff, and also the poor whites do too, so they like that.
He
It's
says he's
anti-poor white.
anti-establishment.
But
The
then
first thing he
again,
does is
poor
give
whites went for
tax.
Hillary majority, of course. A majority of poor white voters went to Hillary. We have to remember that. And that really isn't that crazy. Like our mental models, you probably would assume that Trump supporters are dumb, poor white guys who don't have educations, when in reality, Trump supporters are wealthy white guys who live in suburbs. I'm like, it's such a shock. And that's why Trump got so mad when Biden was getting suburban votes. Because remember when Trump said, please, suburban women, please love me? Because he was losing the
Yeah,
suburbs and he was so confused.
and the same thing happened with he says he's anti-establishment, and his major piece of legislation of being in office, his number one piece of legislation is tax cuts for the rich, the elites. He's been anti-establishment, anti-elites, hates Hollywood, hates the media, hates all the rich people, and the biggest thing he accomplished as president is give them a huge tax cut where 80% of the benefits went to the top 1%, and that benefits him, that benefits his donors, and it goes against everything that we would have, again, like you said, would have assumed from the Trump presidency, that all the poor people are in favor of him, when in reality, it's really the people that you would expect that hate him. It's cool to hate Trump, but they love Trump because they're giving him a lot of money. Like, Amazon, they don't pay any taxes. They love it.
Yeah.
All of the companies that are posting on Twitter about how they hate Trump, they really love him because of this, because of money.
And the poor whites that do, so all the poor white people that do like Trump, it really does show you how little it really was about material condition, because over the past 4 years, these, especially after COVID, these people's material conditions haven't really improved at all, but yet they became even more fervent Trump supporters than before. Like,
Yeah.
what did Trump do for these people? Like nothing. So like after knowing that, what do you do with a group of people who are operating based off a social phenomenon? And by the way, this is a good discussion too about the riots. The difference between like BLM and this, how these riots are brought on by a conspiracy that is completely fake, that the election and their
Mm,
country is being
good
stolen
point.
from them. They think blacks and Marxists are taking over their country. So when it comes to their concerns to riot technically are justified inside their own heads because they're
Yes,
scared as shit right
absolutely.
now. They think their country is being taken control of. They're crazy neo Nazis, like 100%. Just like another person, if you talk about a BLM, someone who might riot from a BLM protest, if something gets heated or something, they also justify it in their own head. But the thing is, the justification for the person storming the Capitol is completely fake and founded upon white supremacy and all the neo-Nazi weird stuff. They probably don't even know they're Nazis, but they say all the same stuff and they hang out with them.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
the BLM stuff is concrete stuff we can measure, we can see, we know from experience that black
Yeah,
people are
we
going through this stuff. This is real shit. So
it's to
like,
the point where
yeah,
police brutality, I'll hear a story about an incident that happened, and I'm like, oh, did that happen a few months ago? No, it happened yesterday, because the same thing keeps happening with police brutality. These are real events. The statistical analysis can prove that there is police brutality that overwhelmingly affects the black community. There is, um, institutional racism in the police departments and throughout the country that needs to be addressed. That is a real problem. When when George Floyd get killed and the following riots occur, that is a justifiable riot.
Yeah, it's reality.
Unlike, oh, ballot boxes from Norway somehow affected, the mail-ins,
It's so fake,
and
dude.
and Trump actually won, and Nancy Pelosi is personally, changing who voted. Like like QAnon, like there's some type of Trump is there to defend, the country against pedophile ring. Like it's not true, and you're absolutely right. But that's a big difference, and I hate that people that online that are saying these just people are all the Democrats are suddenly against rioting. It's like, yes, we're against rioting.
We've
First
been
of all, the
against it.
Capitol, and two, Target versus the Capitol, big difference.
Yeah.
And also, the complaints of the people in the first riots were legitimate, like you said.
We want to fix the issue that is causing the riots. That's how you get the riots to stop. And to fix the riots with BLM and stuff like that. And I don't want to associate BLM and the peaceful protesting with riots, because a lot of it, I mean, dude, 9,000
Yeah,
protests across our country, millions of people. There were 9 total dead in even the worst circumstances. This is one time at our nation's capital based on conspiracy. Freaking, they were going for blood. They wanted to assassinate multiple members of the Congress and the House and Senate. They were going for blood. 5 people died this one time. BLM is nothing in comparison.
over 90% of BLM protests this past year were completely peaceful.
Yeah, it
I think
was
it may
even
have been
higher.
96,
Yeah,
96.
depending what study you look at, like 92, 98. Yeah, like it's crazy having that many people protest and having like little to no violence actually happen at these events. But when it comes to like, so there's BLM and then there's then there's WLM, White Lives Matter, on the other side. It's really interesting to look at and take a step back on. I'm trying to hit a point here. Like, yeah, we're both against riots, but we want to actually do something to stop it. You can't stop the riots on their side whatsoever, like we can with BLM by actually fixing systemic issues, because they're rioting over what is a conspiracy, what is a cult of personality who is telling them their country is being stolen. And in order to protect their country, they need to go against their country to protect Donald Trump. So how do you and what do you do to deal with those people who are doing that? These white supremacist people, how do you, I don't want to say re-educate because that has a really bad connotation, but how do you de-escalate this radical mindset?
De-radicalized.
Yeah, de-radicalize this insane mindset that they would go and die for this, who they consider God Emperor, Donald Trump. It's so twisted. And I wish we had more voices in the media to really talk about the differences between this stuff, like BLM and what they did at the Capitol, because they're not getting nuanced takes like we're giving right now on this topic online or whatever. They're saying riot, riot. Both are pretty much the same. One is black people mad, other is white people mad. White people are suffering under a system, and black people are too. They're both mad about it, but they're not getting into the nitty gritty of it. I just don't know what to do with all the people who are literally like, I'll have to look up some stuff, who are literally like KKK members essentially.
I'm sure when Martin Luther King said, his quote about the riots, which is Martin Luther King today. So it's very important to bring up. A riot is the language of the unheard. That doesn't that is not what he's referring to when it comes to the Capitol. It is there is the unheard of what? The unheard of police brutality, the unheard of racism, the unheard of economic downfall of people that are in the black community
Yeah.
are getting literally murdered by the police officers. That unheard, or like some conspiracy theory, like we
They're
already covered
defending
it.
an imaginary friend essentially. Like unheard, what do you mean? Like they're unheard, but their cause is fake. Like they're not unheard. They're also the most representative or
They're unheard, but
represented
what they
group
have
in the
to say is
country.
BS.
Yeah, what they have to say is complete conspiracy theory. And on MLK, I want to bring up every year how MLK, all that bullshit about him being like super nice and normal and not like a radical figure. I hate that. He was a socialist. He was a radical. He wanted to
For
reform
universal
the
basic
U.S.
income.
system. He was for universal income. He was for jobs guarantee. He was for some form of universal health care. He wanted to decommodify certain things. He wanted
Unionized. That was
unions.
why he was murdered.
Yes, he wanted unionizing workers. He wanted black and white workers to come together. And I see quotes all the time with him saying something about black and whites coming together. And people post that who are racist to say, I'm colorblind because of this. That's not what Martin Luther King meant. He literally meant don't look at black people as subhuman because of the color of their skin. Be able to have conversations as human beings and all that stuff. And also, another quote that is distorted is freaking Malcolm X. There's a quote going around right now from right-wing sites saying, Malcolm X talking about how liberals are terrible and racist and upholding systemic racism. Trust me, buddy, if you're on the right and you're quoting Malcolm X and he attacks liberals, he is not on your side, buddy. He is just a little bit further to that side, if anything. So don't be misrepresenting that.
He's attacking the liberals from the left. He's not attacking the liberals from the right.
Yeah, of course, 100%. And all this stuff is always lost in history. We get the nice little, whitewashed cartoon character version of MLK. MLK had a dream, and he went in the street, and they all held hands and walked down the street and sang.
There was more violence and riots in the 1960s during the Civil Rights Movement than there were during the Black Lives Matter movement. Far more. But we don't hear about that. We like to think that Martin Luther King, like you said, walk down Kumbaya and walk to the Capitol and said, please sign this document saying, no. They fought for decades fighting for the civil rights movement, and they finally got it towards the end. And now we like to refer back and say, why can't they be peaceful like Martin Luther King? Martin Luther King did advocate for peaceful protests, but that doesn't mean that nothing was accomplished with rioting.
Yeah, and dude, they never like to bring up how he got assassinated for his beliefs. He was threatened to be killed his entire life. He was told to commit suicide his entire life. Like all this stuff they leave out.
Was actively surveilling him.
Yeah, he threatened the way the world works, and he did it in such a in such a pure way. It's pretty insane how people like him ever even existed, and it's really just one of those things. Our misunderstanding of history in America is one of the reasons systemic racism and individual explicit racism still survive so much. Because people really don't understand the history of America. And sure, some of that is because they don't want to. Like, if you tell them it, they'll probably block it out and be like, well, what are you saying about systemic racism? I don't see color. Racism was made illegal in 1964 or whatever. Yeah. They'll say something like that, but it's so unfortunate.
I don't know if you want to talk about this, and maybe you can decide. But how do you feel about reparations?
Reparations. So the conversation around reparations should be like, how can it be? It should be done. It should be done, yes. But how can we do it in an effective way? So in order to get something passed in a democracy, you usually need consent from the public. So should we focus on poverty programs over race-based programs? Because due to systemic racism, more black people are poor. That seems to be the right thing to do just because it'll have the political capital behind it. For example, if you cancel all student debt right now, the income discrepancy between whites and blacks in America would literally be cut in half because of how much more debt black people have to take on. So when it comes to reparations, I don't know if literally just saying reparations will work politically. It is the right thing to do, 100%. But poverty-focused programs can be done, and they can be done to help black Americans. But we're having issues passing Medicaid expansion in some states because, like, if you're a voter and you make a decent amount of money, why would you vote yes to reparations? Or why would you vote yes to a Medicaid expansion when you don't need that? So, it's hard to get that political will. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I think reparations definitely should be put into place. I think Marianne Williamson makes a huge argument for that. And I wish they would have talked about it a little bit more in the during the debates. But her view on that is very clear. Germany paid reparations for the Holocaust. And, enough time has passed where for us to at least attempt to try to heal, attempt to try to move forward past the original sin, one of the worst things that happened in American history, which is slavery, probably the worst. We need to try to pay back some economically benefit those who were affected and their family was affected by that. We need to acknowledge as a nation just how bad what we did was. And reparations is not the end of the story, it's the beginning. And we need to do that to signify that we are willing and trying to move forward towards the direction of more equality.
Yeah, and we have to get it through to. This is so hard too. The concept of generational social mobility is big here too, because you often hear like, "Oh, slavery was so long ago. Why would we give reparations right now?" But we need to be able to show the public the direct line between slavery and where Black people are in America today. Like 30% of Black people starting off in poverty is because of slavery and because we never actually repaid what we stole from them, 40 acres and a mule or whatever was promised. And that definitely needs to be done. But anyway, I think although this is really last second, not really organized, I think we had a decent conversation for
Of
this
course.
podcast number 1. Thank you for joining me, Mark. I know you're going to be starting some YouTube stuff or Twitter stuff or whatever soon. Be on the lookout for that.